It's important to know what matters to you so you can decide what boundaries you're going to set. When you know what you value, then your boundaries uphold and support those things that matter to you. Hi, I'm Barb Nangle. I want to welcome you to my podcast, Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery, where I help people heal their emotional, psychological, and spiritual wounds and make deep, lasting changes in their lives. I'm the founder and CEO of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting. I'm a boundaries coach who specializes in helping women who are focused on what others are thinking and doing and neglect themselves in the process. And I have coached hundreds of people on how to build healthy boundaries using my exclusive Build framework. On this podcast, I share my experience, strength, and hope from recovery. I don't support or endorse any particular 12-step recovery fellowship, and I don't claim to speak for any particular 12-step fellowship. I also don't believe that 12-step recovery is the only way to recover. You might need additional help. I'm an avid beachcomber who collects sea glass, shells, wood, and stones. I am a formerly closeted fan of the Hallmark Channel, especially the Christmas movies. Hello, Christmas in July. I wear fingerless gloves from September to June because my hands are always cold, so I have about 15 pairs. And I get a huge kick out of counting how many days, weeks, and months there are until my birthday or Christmas at completely random times of the year. My hope is that you'll find my words concretely helpful in improving your life, whether you're in recovery or not. If you like what you've heard on this episode, please screenshot it and share it on your social media and tag me at Higher Power Coaching. This is episode 272, How to Take Control by Setting Digital Boundaries for Peace and Productivity. Before I get into the topic today, I want to give you an update on Melanie, who was my guest that I coached on episode 263. I have linked that episode in the show notes in case you didn't get to listen to that. Melanie volunteered to do a live coaching session with me so that we could record it and put it on the podcast. And on that episode, she was talking about a situation with her roommates that she'd been living with for a period of time. And basically, she did all the work and they never did anything. And to be honest with you, when we were done with the coaching session, I kind of felt like, oh my God, do I really want to put that on the air? Because I felt like I just didn't really help her and didn't get through to her at all. And I was like, well, whatever. This is what happens. This is what a coaching session with me is really like. I said I was going to coach her and put it on the air, so I did. And I didn't listen to it again until after it came out on the air. And I was like, okay, well, I feel like as a coach, I did what I could do in a half an hour with somebody that I'd never met before. And then this past week, I got a message from Melanie on Instagram. I had emailed her a while after the coaching session to check in on her to see if there was anything I could do to support her. And this is what she said. Hey, sorry for the lack of response to your email. I'm not going to have another pointless conversation with my grown roommates to ask them to contribute. I will be moving out in August and I'm finding my own place with the help of my parents. Thanks for your time and perspective. And this was huge because I just did not feel like I got through to her at all, because she essentially trained them that everything she says she's going to follow through on, she's not, that she's going to do all the cleaning and chores. All they have to do is just listen to her complain for a while. And when I tried to present ideas to her, like the possibility of moving out, she was like, nope, I'm not moving out. I was here first. And this place really meets my needs. I eventually want to buy a home and I just don't want to have to go through all that stuff now. And I essentially said to her, so you're telling me you'd rather suffer than have peace. And there's not really anything anybody else can do about that, only you. And so I have got to say, I am so fucking pleased for Melanie that somehow something I said made it through her denial. And I wrote back and said, "Oh my God, Melanie, that is fantastic. Good for you for taking action." And then I said, "How does it feel to finally take charge of your life?" And she said, "It feels scary in a good way." And that's essentially what you're doing when you start setting boundaries. You're like, this is how I'm going to live my life. And then you live that way. And sometimes there's consequences. Well, I mean, there's always consequences. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're crappy, but ultimately it all works out to the good because you're taking charge of your life. You're living your life the way you want to, and it's your life. So that's as it should be. Okay, on to digital boundaries. One of the most important digital boundaries that I have ever instituted is that I leave the ringer off for my phone. Any notifications I get, whether text message, phone call, app notifications, etc., don't disturb me, at least, sound wise, because I decide when I'm going to check my phone. I'm not disturbed by other people's schedules. When someone texts me or every time something comes through on social media, I don't get alerted by that because I've turned the ringer off. And I shared this tip in a boundaries workshop once, and a friend of mine attended. She's a therapist. And a week after the workshop, she was like, "Oh my God, Barb, this was a fucking game changer to turn the ringer off on my phone." She used to get resentful that people were interrupting her personal time. And then she realized, well, wait a minute, I can turn the ringer off when I have personal time. And if I want to be available for my clients immediately, then I can have sort of like office hours where the ringer stays on. So that is my number one boundary for the digital world. Another boundary I have, which I just alluded to, is about notifications on apps. I only allow a handful of apps to give me notifications. Now, I have an Android, so that means a little red dot appears on the app icon, and maybe a notification message will come through like a text message, sort of like at the top of my phone. And so that means I don't get alerted when somebody makes a comment on social media or posts something on social media. It means I decide when to check my social media. I'm in charge of my life. My phone isn't, social media isn't. One app I do allow to give me notifications is Telegram Messenger. I use this so that my private clients are able to text me whenever they want, or they can leave me a voice memo. And I allow Telegram to give me notifications because I want to be there for them in a way that I wish someone was there for me when I was building boundaries. I also allow notifications for text messages because I want to know when the people who are close to me are messaging me. But I only look at these when I decide to check my phone. I also allow the Calendly app to notify me when someone signs up for an appointment on my calendar. For certain types of appointments, I allow people to plop onto my calendar. For example, I do a lot of networking for my business, so I have these 30-minute tea chats with people. I also offer a 30-minute Better Boundaries call for people who are thinking about coaching with me. I have one-on-one coaching sessions that people can sign up for just one time. And I want to see when these appointments are coming in for various reasons. Like maybe I want to make sure that I buffer the time before the appointment. I also allow my water drinking app to notify me because it helps me to know when it's time to drink more water. So those are the kinds of apps I allow to give me notifications because I want to know that that stuff is coming through. But the dozens of other apps, I don't want them notifying me because I'm going to check them when I am ready. Another boundary I have on my digital world is that I only follow accounts on social media on things that I really care about. I don't follow people that I don't like, or if something comes through that I don't like, I delete it or I block it. For example, I don't pay attention to the news or politics. So I'm not watching any of those social media channels because it's not good for my mental health. Now, I know that doesn't work for many people, and that's fine because you're living your life and I am living my life. Now, before I got into recovery, before I had healthy boundaries, I listened to NPR all the time. And I do miss the human interest stories from NPR, but not enough to be bombarded with all of the news that comes in between. Listening to the news and paying attention to politics just revved up my nervous system, and my nervous system regulation is of the highest priority for me now. And that is actually a good question to help you decide what your digital boundaries are, what you need to have in place. And that is, am I revving up my nervous system? And if you are, then that might be a good place for a boundary. This next one you may not think of as a digital boundary, but I'm going to qualify it as that because I use digital tools to help me with these boundaries, which is boundaries around my time. Time is my most precious resource, and I feel pretty safe in saying it's everybody's most precious resource. I can generate more of my other precious resources of love, money, energy, but I only have so much time. So I use digital tools to help me with my boundaries of time. I put boundaries around blocks of time on my calendar so I can focus on specific tasks each week or day. My calendar is super important to me, and I chunk my time based on what I'm going to work on. Because I'm an entrepreneur, that makes sense for me because I have multiple areas of my business that I want to move all of them forward at the same time. And if I spend all week long working on one thing, then I'm not going to get to anything else. So I want to make sure I have chunks of time to move multiple things forward. For example, 9 a.m. on Monday, higher power coaching hour. This is where I review my goals, what I did the previous week, and the plan for the upcoming week. At 10, I work on my newsletter. At 11, I meet with my VA. At 12, I have yoga with my sweetheart. At 2, I write on my book, which, by the way, should come out next year. And if you didn't know, it's about my 2018 road trip, and it's called Roadside Recovery: One Woman's Travels and Travails on Her First Solo Road Trip. And if you're interested in getting a sneak peek at it, you can get a free chapter if you go to my books page. So it's higherpowercc.com/books. I will try to remember to put a link in the show notes. You put in your name, you'll get notified when the book comes out, and you'll get a free chapter from the book. Anyway, at 3:00, I meet with my operations manager and so on. So those things happen every Monday. So I'm moving forward on my business, on my newsletter, on my book with my operations manager because I'm doing those things every single Monday. And then, of course, I have clients I meet with weekly at the same time and various other things. But this allows me to decide ahead of time what I will be doing when. I don't have to think, what should I work on now? Because I've made the decision ahead of time and strategically based on what I want to accomplish in my business. Now, if you don't work for yourself, you might use this concept for things like grocery shopping on Saturdays at noon, going to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7. You get to decide how you want to live your life, and you can use digital tools to help you manage your boundaries. Thinking of your time as a precious resource and making sure that you're putting the things that are most important to you in your calendar first is really helpful in ensuring that you're living purposefully and with intention. Another boundary in my digital life that I just had to institute this past week, and I had to talk to my sponsor about it because I couldn't trust myself to follow through with it on my own. Before I tell you what it is, I want to say something about that. Asking someone to help you hold yourself accountable to your own boundaries, this can be super fucking helpful. I call it leveraging my codependent powers for good. Here's what I mean by that. I think of myself as a recovered codependent, but I'm always going to have some codependent tendencies. So what that means is I'm always going to have a certain level of investment in what people think of me. I want to look good in their eyes and all that sort of thing. So when I need help holding a boundary, I solicit the help of someone else, and I use my codependent powers of wanting people to approve of me for my benefit instead of how I used to do it, which was for the benefit of everybody else. I leverage the tendency to get other people's approval in a way that supports my boundaries. Here's the boundary. No phone use in the car. I listen to podcasts and books on tape all the time. And when I'm driving, I find myself doing things like advancing through the commercials on a podcast. And I'm not talking about always just when I'm sitting at a stoplight. I have actually responded to text messages while driving, and I know that is wrong. And it violates my own values to do that. So I knew that I needed to bring my sponsor in on this. And I told her, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove my phone holder / charger and put it in the glove compartment, and will only use it if I'm actually using the GPS or if for some reason I absolutely must charge my phone when it's in the car. Now, I only started to do this a little over a week ago, and it's been interesting. Now, I like to take in information practically all the time. I sort of feel like if I could find a way to plug my brain into the internet and download everything, I would do it. So listening to the radio is really nice, but not all the time. I'm used to taking in info. So I found myself doing things like, well, if I leave my phone in my purse and I listen to something that's longer than the amount of time I'm going to be in the car, then that's okay, because I'm not going to have to like advance it forward or stop it or whatever. Or I guess I could just put up with it if it ended and went on to something else. And I've done that. And only a couple of times this week, I have absolutely listened to way more radio. And by the way, who's this guy? Teddy Swims. Oh my God. I don't know what this song is. Oh, I've heard it 3 times. I absolutely love it. But today, something happened, which is that I was listening to a podcast and a call came through. And for some reason, even when my ringer is off, if I have earbuds in, I hear the phone ringing. And I went to reach for it and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That can wait. I'm driving. So this is a tough one for me, but very, very important, because God forbid someone gets hurt because I feel the need to respond to a text message or advance through a commercial on a podcast while I'm driving. Now, there are also boundaries around the types of things I share on social media. My sweetheart is a private person, so I only post photos of him extremely rarely, and I get his permission ahead of time to do so. I never tag him on anything, and he makes it a point not to comment on anything of mine. Another one, I used to use the Slack app when I had a part-time job. Well, I didn't, my team used it. And I would turn it on do not disturb when I wasn't working, so I wouldn't be notified. And speaking of not doing work stuff while outside of work, I also didn't check my email for those part-time jobs except for during the hours I was working and getting paid. You do not have to check your work emails outside of work hours, even if you've always done it for years. Now, there may be consequences to you doing that. You just have to decide if they're worth it, but you get to make the choice. This is something I have coached a number of clients on, and it can get pretty tricky depending on the job you have, but it is an option for you to not look at or respond to work emails outside of working hours. Another way I manage my time, I can't believe I didn't say this before when I was talking about time blocking, is that I use the Pomodoro Technique. So this is a digital boundary for sure. So this is a productivity technique where you work on a 25-minute segment of time and you take a break for 5 minutes. So there's a built-in Pomodoro timer in this program that I use. And after 2 hours of these 25-minute work, 5-minute break segments, you get a 15-minute break rather than the 5 minutes. And what this technique has done for my attention, my ability to focus, and my productivity has been incredible. I used to be a multitasker. Well, I mean, let's be clear. I'm not at all a multitasker now, but it's nothing like it was before. I previously flitted from thing to thing to thing because I had all these notifications on my computer and things were dinging and coming at me. But since I've learned to manage notifications and use things like chunking my time in the Pomodoro Technique, I work on one thing at a time. This Pomodoro Technique helps me to get really super focused and into the flow state in that 25-minute period of time. Then taking the 5-minute breaks takes my eyes away from the computer. It gets me to move my body. And I was told by one of my fitness instructors, sitting is the new smoking. And I was like, I quit smoking a long time ago. I do not want to have that kind of effect on my body. So I want to move my ass. So I at least go up and down the stairs during my 5-minute break. I might do other things. Taking breaks from our screens is really important in the digital age, where sometimes people can sit for hours and hours and hours in front of the screen, not moving their bodies, and it's just not good for us. It's not good for your eyes, your mind, your body, your spirit. So I get to take breaks. My mind shifts away from whatever I was working on, which is good for creativity. I used to be afraid that if I came back from a break, I wasn't going to be able to get back into the flow that I'd been in earlier, but that's never happened. It gives my brain a break, and then I come back fresh, even after just 5 minutes. Sometimes during those breaks, I do things like empty the dishwasher, bring the laundry downstairs, anything like that. When I had poor boundaries, if I stopped what I was doing for work to do chores, I would end up either not going back to work or like hours later because I just got lost in whatever I was doing. But because I use the Pomodoro technique, I have a timer that goes off and I make sure that whatever I'm doing is only 5 minutes. Now, truth be told, sometimes I go a little bit more than 5 minutes, sometimes a little bit less, but I really try to stick to approximately the 5 minutes. One thing I do with my computer that's similar to how I manage my phone is that I don't allow email or calendar notifications on my computer. When I'm on the computer, I check my emails when I am ready and have the availability to go through them. I know some people who schedule their emailing time, like maybe they check their emails at 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. and only spend 30 minutes on it. And that's not something I do, but I don't feel it's necessary for me. However, I am working on handing over the management of my email to one of my virtual assistants. And I'm very much looking forward to that, but it also scares the shit out of me because I've been handling my own email for some 29 years. And the idea of handing it over to someone else is a little bit scary, but it will also be a relief once I get used to it, which is what boundaries do. Once we get used to our boundaries, we feel the good effects of them, and it's a relief. Now, here's a digital boundary I've gotten much better at recently, which is not using screen time while eating. I've gotten significantly better about it in the last few months since I went through my pit of doom that I spoke about a few episodes ago. And I really had to slow things down and limit what kind of input was coming into my brain. I much more frequently sit and pay attention to my food when I'm eating. I've been really good about not using my phone at all while eating, though I do still sometimes watch TV, but I definitely pause and pray longer than I did before that pit of doom incident. I make sure that I think about the sources of all the foods that I'm eating and how thankful that I am. I think about my connection to the earth through the food. And even if I do watch TV while I'm eating, I make sure I do all of that stuff first. Now, of course, there are way more digital boundaries that you could institute, especially when it comes to children, but I'm not a parent, so I don't feel like I'm the right person to speak about that. I'm sharing my digital boundaries to give you an idea of what they are, why I chose the boundaries I chose, and to show you the impact that they have on me. It's important to know what matters to you so you can decide what boundaries you're going to set. When you know what you value, then your boundaries uphold and support those things that matter to you. For me, being able to move a bunch of aspects of my business forward at the same time is important to me. That's why I block my time. Keeping my nervous system regulated is very important to me, so I don't pay attention to the news and politics. Being available to my private clients is very important to me. So I allow notifications from the Telegram Messenger app. You get my drift. Having these boundaries in place allows me to have all these benefits. I get well-served clients who get the type of support they want and need when they want and need it. I get a regulated nervous system. I have a lot more peace of mind and a lot more control over my life that I didn't even know was possible to have before I had healthy boundaries. Now, if there are additional digital boundaries you think I should know about or should have talked about here, feel free to drop me a note. You can either DM me on Instagram or email me barb@higherpowercc.com. Here's to your digital peace and serenity. It costs the average professional woman $20,500 per year to keep saying yes when she really wants to say no and neglecting herself because she's so focused on others. Here's how I know. I went to AI for help and it told me to include time spent on unwanted tasks, opportunity costs, and the cost to their health and well-being in figuring this out. So here are the numbers it gave me. Time spent on unwanted tasks was assumed to be 5 hours per week, and the average professional women's salary is $103,000 per year. So that's a total of $12,500 per year. Opportunity costs are what these women potentially miss in career advancement, skill development, bonuses, etc. That's assumed at $5,000. Health and well-being includes increased medical expenses of $1,000 due to stress and self-neglect, and $2,000 due to decreased productivity because of burnout. So, if you want an extra $20,500 per year, you've got to stop saying yes and neglecting yourself. So if that's you or the women in your organization, please contact me, barb@higherpowercc.com, for either private coaching, trainings, or keynote speeches. If you like this podcast, and I'm guessing you did or you wouldn't still be listening, then you're gonna love the other things I have to offer. If you'd love pre-release podcast scripts and episodes before anyone else gets them, or if you'd love access to content from my private vault that I developed exclusively for my private clients, which is like having a work session with me without me actually being there, go to patreon.com/higherpowercoaching. There are 3 tiers ranging from as low as $4 up to $24 a month. You'll also love my weekly newsletter, Friday Fragments, which has content very similar to the podcast. You can check it out at fridayfragments.news. That's fridayfragments.news. Please like and subscribe to my podcast on your favorite podcast outlet. I'd also love it if you'd leave a review, which you can do either in the show notes or on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other people find my podcast so they can get the benefits you've gotten from listening. If someone came to mind when you listened to this particular episode, please share it with them. And my favorite place to hang out on social media is Instagram. I'm at Higher Power Coaching. Please DM me there. I'd love to hear what you got from this episode. I run group and private coaching programs on building healthy boundaries. Whether you need help with boundaries in your personal, professional, or romantic life, I can help. Head on over to barbchat.net, where you can hop onto my calendar for a free 30-minute Better Boundaries consultation. My ideal client is someone who is ripe for change. If that's you, I would love to work with you. My goal with all my work is to help you make lasting changes in your life like I've made deep, lasting changes in my life. Remember, it's never too late to recover. No one is beyond hope, and healing is possible. Thanks for listening.